Hello everyone, my name is Aryan, and you are listening to Bass Tunes on KUCI 88.9 FM in Irvine. If you somehow heard what's going on in the background, and if you know what this is, not real quick, we're going to be talking about the newest Slowdive album today, giving it a quick little review for the first half of the show, and then the second half of the show, we're going to be talking about Starfield, the new Bethesda game, just to give my quick thoughts on it. And also, we're going to talk about my thoughts on the new Verb concert, the concert I went to. I gave a little bit of a description last week after I played their interview, but, I wanted to give myself a little bit more time. And finally, we're going to discuss the trials and tribulations of HTML and making a website for myself, which you'll be able to hear about later. So I hope you guys enjoy the show. All right, well, we can just keep that off for now. Okay, so I kind of forgot about the fact that Slowdive were, one, putting out a new album, and two, going back on tour. Now, if y'all don't know who this band is, well, I'll explain them to you. Maybe you haven't heard them. It's a shoegaze band back in the 90s, kind of the big three of the sort of subgenre of alternative rock called shoegaze, which is something I've discussed on my show in its first quarter or season, whatever you like to call it. I sort of compared the big three albums, and Slowdive's big album was one of them, actually. Slowdive, or however you're supposed to pronounce that one. I still can't figure it out. Shoegaze, of course, just a quick refresher, is known as it's characterized by just sort of a wash of guitar. It's just a lot of noise, sort of somber lyrics and themes about, I guess, the adolescent experience, the sort of just passion and love and all that stuff and all the sort of negativity that may or may not, come with that. And it does seem to mix both rock and sort of electronic stuff in terms of synthesizers and things like that. But let's talk about Slowdive specifically real quick, right? Their first album, Just for a Day, was sort of an introduction. You might have heard Catch the Breeze. I think that one was sampled on a Lil B song, so, I don't think anyone would have heard that one, but you ever heard Open Thunder, Eternal Slumber from the album I'm Gay, I'm Happy? Then you might know, right? But it all sort of came back with their second album, Slowdive, and this is the one that really sort of, I guess, put them on the map. They got the huge record deal with Creation, their kids, basically, around my age, barely my age, maybe I'm pretty sure younger than my age, and they got this whole record deal, and they're making this album, and they want Brian Eno to produce it, and he refuses, but he does agree to produce like 2 tracks on it, so it kind of goes out pretty well. It's an interesting little affair, you know what I mean? It just sort of goes off. But I love that album. I haven't heard it a lot recently. It's just not really been what's on my mind in terms of what to listen to, especially because it's been summer. I guess the summer is over now, so I guess it is the perfect time to get back into that sort of somber, shoegazy, atmospheric autumn mood. So I suppose we're sort of in the right time, and they sort of picked a good time to release Everything Is Alive. But here's the thing, right? So that does well. And then the British press just started hating on shoegaze. The new wave is Britpop. And with that regard, they're basically done. And 1995 rolls around after Slowdive, and Neil Halstead sort of makes basically his own album to sort of be what was once the final Slowdive album, Pygmalion. And Pygmalion is really stripped back, really just atmospheric, more electronic, simple loops building onto each other, less guitar, more weird synthy, and the vocals are even more stretched and looped, and it's cool, right? It didn't really sell that well, and it wasn't super well received, I think, when it came out, but I think it has been looked back upon pretty favorably, and I believe it was admirably what was it? It was referred to as career suicide in a review, in a good way. Like, he was just sort of saying, hey, we're going to go out with this is what I want to do. And after that, they got dropped from the label with no celebration, no fanfare, no nothing. They just got dropped. No one made a huge ruckus about it. Shoegaze was dead. I mean, was it really? But, I mean, I suppose in that area, the big three bands, MBV, them, and Ride, My Bloody Valentine put out Loveless and then didn't put another album for 20-something years, and then MBV 2013, and then they still haven't really done anything. Apparently they signed a record deal, but they haven't done anything. Ride sort of tried to move into that Britpop sphere, kind of. Carnival of Light, I think Tarantula, and people didn't really like it, and then they just sort of disappeared for a little while. Lush, too, put out Love Life, which is another dive into Britpop, and then, well, unfortunate passing happened with one of the band members, and then they basically never came back. They put out like one EP, and then they're just done in 2016. But I guess now Slowdive is the one who's really back. I guess Ride came back in 2017, 2019. They're still kind of around. But Slowdive comes back in 2017, years after, and puts out the self-titled album. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, listeners. I haven't heard that one, at least in full. I don't recall most of it. But from doing some scouring, apparently, I was right, and Everything Is Alive is a pretty big departure and is much more minimalist. So, yeah, 2017, they come out. 5 years later, Everything Is Alive. Apparently, this one was sort of being made during 2020, and then the you-know-what happened, so then they sort of stopped work on it, and now they picked it up. And now they're going on tour and stuff, and tickets are super expensive, so I'm probably not going to go. But, hey, it's pretty cool. Everything Is Alive. The first song, the one I played right now, is Shanty, of course, and this is an interesting one to me because I didn't even know it had lyrics. I'll be honest with you. They were so murky, I didn't realize that upon first listen. Now, I was listening to this in full at the gym, right? And I was sort of mostly intently paying attention, especially during my sets. So I got the whole picture of it, right? Shanty's cool. You hear the synths sort of start up, little plinks, and it just sort of builds a little bit of wash of guitars, a little bit of wavy stuff. You get your little Slowdive face. You're like, wow. But it feels a lot more skeletal. That's what I've sort of been. That's the sort of feeling I got. So this sounds a lot more minimal. It sounds a lot more just low key, lighter, more airy than their usual. And obviously, like, I could be comparing this to 2017's, and then I was like, oh, maybe Pygmalion. But I'm trying to. I also, of course, I did compared it to Slovaki because that's the big one. That's one everyone likes and adores, and is the biggest one. And well, my thoughts on that are quite simple. It's a lot lighter than that because Slovaki is really heavy in air and just washes over you with these beautiful sounds and crisp production. Everything feels a little bit more rough on Everything Is Alive, but also airy at the same time. I don't really know how to describe it, but it was interesting and enjoyable, the sort of sonic nature of Shanty. The other thing worth noting is that there are 2 or 3 instrumental songs. The second song is just fully instrumental. We're having a lot more of those on this album than at least I remember on basically any of their albums from previous eras. Now, obviously, instrumentals are cool, right? And I would say in Pygmalion, a lot of it was sort of just one loop or one vocal thing, more so treated like an instrument. Like an example would be Miranda, which is a really strange track off Pygmalion, which is just basically a guitar strum that's reverbed. Neil Halstead, one of the main singer, one of the main people, one of the main 2, back in it. But yeah. It's interesting, though, because another thing I sort of read on other critics and things I sort of, when it comes to doing reviews and things like that, generally I give it my impression, then I see what people say and see if it matches up with mine. What insight do I gain out of it? And usually I do gain a bit of insight from taking a look at sort of the background behind it, what other people have said, sort of, not to help formulate my opinion, but, help flesh it out a bit. And one of the things I read was really interesting is that if, and I agree with this too, and it sort of reshaped my perception of this album, is that it really does feel like an album that's starkly aware of age and progress of time. And it's interesting too, because, I guess MBV, in comparison, obviously, obviously I should compare MBV to Slowdive, but I haven't done that. That one really felt stuck in the 90s in the sense, because most of it was just made in the 90s and finished in the 2000s. And a lot of it sort of feels very much like that era of shoegaze, but with some new modern elements and a bit cleaner sounding, right? This is different. It feels much more stark and bare and modern, but it's also a little bit more lush and a little bit more rich than Pygmalion. So it's sort of an interesting middle ground. You know, I never really got those. Actually, no. With a couple of exceptions, I basically never really got the huge wash of guitar and the, you know, like that one chord that gets played into infinity and it just sort of rattles your bones. I didn't really feel like I got that nearly as much with Everything Is Alive. I don't even know if it was a surprise drop or not, but it just sort of showed up and I realized, oh, wow, wait, new Slowdive. Wow, I got to listen to this. And then I did, right? It's interesting, you know. Slowdive as a band is just an interesting little thing. They're old now. Isn't that crazy? It's like sort of the teenage love experience and all that stuff, which was really documented on, let's say, Souvlaki. I think was made about the sort of the dissipation of the two leads, Rachel and Neil. They're sort of dissipating like romance. And now they come back and they're older. You know, they delve adult life, so it's interesting sort of taking a new perspective on this sort of genre or subgenre or whatever you want to do. Obviously, they're not, you know, it's their music, but it's cool. I do like the cover art a lot. I did really enjoy the cover art. I know it's a strange thing to enjoy, but it's interesting compared to their other work. I feel like every single piece of their cover art is slightly different, and I really like Everything Is Alive. It's a bit abstract, which I enjoy. It's just a sort of solid, you know, tan background with red lines. Looks like some sort of maze. Some, I guess, diamonds. And some hooded figure in the center. It's strange, but it works. Also, for some reason, all the song titles are in all lowercase, which is interesting. They didn't do that with Slowdive's self-titled, right? But it's interesting. There's some love songs or some things like that. Oh, I remember something, right? The other thing with the whole age thing is hearing Neil Halstead, the male vocalist, because of course Slowdive has the male and female vocalists, and they sort of join in together sometimes. Neil's, I guess, now a bit more the creative force behind it. At least sometimes he is. He sounds older, man. He sounds older. And like after Slowdive broke up or stopped making music or whatever you want to call it, the members sort of regrouped as Mojave 3, the sort of alt country slowcore thing. And I really did like the few albums they put out, at least the main tracks off there. Love Songs on the Radio, Tomorrow's Taken. What was it? I Saw a View, I think it was called. Obviously, it's very simple. You know, it's not like, oh, it's country, but, you know, you got the twang guitar. And then, of course, I mean, it's probably nothing like what you heard on the last show before this one, right? Georgia's show. You probably did hear it's different. I don't know if it will really fit on her catalog if we put on some Mojave 3 on there. But hey, you know, it's cool. But you sort of see a little bit of age in Halstead's voice, but now Neil Halstead, he sounds older. Or maybe he's just going in a more breathy register. That might be part of it. You know what I mean? And that's especially, you can especially tell that on Andalusia Plays, which I guess is one of the other love songs, and it's interesting. I don't know if I really like the super low tone he does because it's super breathy and it was a bit off-putting in the sense of that's not what I'm used to. But he did sort of have this nasally sort of tinge to it, higher nasally tinge to it around Souvlaki and things like that. And that makes sense, right? He's a lot younger. Now he's getting older. It all sort of makes sense, right? So, there you go. Let's see. What else can I say about this thing? Of course, we had 3 singles released from it. And interestingly enough, I don't know if I normally do this or don't do this. I thought the singles were the best ones. I thought Skin in the Game was the best song on the thing because it had a bit more of a minor sort of sad tone with the chords and things like that, especially on the ending. I might play that towards the end, that little last 45-second bit, because that part was one of the few times that I sort of went, oh, wow, okay, this is neat. The rest of it wasn't really nearly as gripping to me. And maybe with more listens, I'll come back to this and I'll give you guys an update. This is more of a first impressions thing. But if I come back to this, which I probably will with the weather and all that, right now I'm still on that, the same music I've been listening to for a bit now, though it has shifted a bit, you know? Years do change things finally, and I don't really know what I'm going to be coming into this school year with. in terms of music, right? But I might be coming into, like, am I really going to come in with Saint Anger again? Well, not again. Last year I didn't. Am I really going to come in and still listen to that? And yes, I have. And listen, I can talk about that album every single day of my life for about, let's say, 2 more months, then I'll get bored of it. And then I don't want to listen to it again for hours. I don't know, man. I gotta think of something new, right? You gotta think of something new. But I do like the singles. Overall, as I guess I just said, it's a lot less impactful to me. It was more of a background noise. Like, this is cool, and I'm enjoying it. And I'm glad they're making music again, and I'm glad they're touring again. I hope that I can see them, but with we've spent a lot. I've done a lot of things this summer. Gotta check the pocketbooks. You know what I mean? Gotta check on that for later. So maybe one day, hopefully, they're performing live again, and it'll be all said and done. Right? I'm not even a massive concert guy, anyways. They're loud, and the earplugs that I have don't really work. Earplugs either just muffle you too much, or they don't do enough. Right? They sort of deaden the high end frequencies. And it's funny, too, because, like, there's all kinds of earplugs you can buy. It's like, oh, you can get the loop ones or whatever at the observatory. And, like, those are cool, right? I haven't tried them. I got, like, a pair of, like, 3M ones from the hardware store. And those sort of got the job done. But they were too muffled if you stuck them in too much. So you have to pull them out, like, one bit so you can sort of hear the high end. You know, the cymbals and things like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not a huge concert guy, at least in terms of the listening experience. I don't really have an answer to that, though. I know this is off topic, but, like, are concerts really that much better sounding? I guess not. You're mostly just there for the experience of hearing it live. And I guess a lot of the concerts that I have been to aren't really ones that, like, I've dearly wanted to. I've been doing more of those, but only a few times has it really been like, wow, this is amazing with this one song or whatever, right? And those are just my favorite artists going to see them live. And maybe a Slowdive would be one. I guess another one might be, like, I don't know. I wanted to see the Biscuit live. There's the Aftershock Festival, but I'm going to be out of town for that one. See my cousin getting married, so we're not going to do that. So that's cool. You know, I'd probably give the album like a 7. It needs to grow on me a bit, 7 or 8. It's good. Another thing I read was that they were working on it as sort of a series of skeletal demos, and it kind of fits like that. Some of the recording quality doesn't seem as nice. I didn't hear all. I did listen to the majority of it, not on my main listening headphones, just my AirPod 2s, but Pro 2s or whatever you want to call them. But those generally do. I think they're solid enough sonically for me to be able to tell how something sounds. It's not gonna be as picture perfect as my Sennheisers or whatever, but I think these ones. I think I've dented them so much or something. There's less sound coming out of the right side, or whatever jack I'm using for this right now is not sounding good. But hey. I mean, I hope it's not the latter because that'd be pretty goofy. But hey, Yep. So that's probably 7 out of 10. If I have more to say about it later on, I'll come back to that. But I'll probably end up giving it a more thorough discussion and listen and collect my thoughts on it again. And maybe I'll come back to you guys next week with that. We'll see. I thought my favorite songs on there were Kisses and Skin in the Game, a.k.a. the 2 singles. I thought that a lot of it was very atmospheric, very sort of synthy heavy, drum machines type thing, but sort of putting back in the somewhat of the wavy guitars and more poppy song structures of Souvlaki and maybe their self-titled, or I don't know, maybe their other stuff compared to Pygmalion. I guess that's my overall thoughts for now. It's cool. I enjoy it. I hope they continue making music for as long as they wish, because I love them as a band, and I very much enjoy that. Right? Shouldn't blow me away. Maybe we'll later. I guess with shoegaze, generally, I am expecting to be like, wow, heavy sound, whatever. But, you know, it's a different type of thing. We're in a different generation. You're not going to get that, really. And I'm sure there's a billion bands trying to get that sound going again. And you can probably go see them live or go find them on streaming or whatever with, like, 2 listeners. And you'll find that's fixed if this is not what you're looking for. It's kind of the beauty of it all. You know, you can sort of check this stuff out. Okay, so the first half of the show. Okay, cool. Second half, let's go Starfield. Let's talk about Starfield, yeah. Starfield. I generally wasn't going to talk about this because I thought I wouldn't be as invested in this game as I am, but I am, right? And this show is about media, and I figured sometimes I do come in and I give my thoughts on some new game developments and things like that, and whatever I'm playing, because, video games are a huge important part of my consumption, and, probably an important part of my life, which is a strange thing to say, but, there's a lot of things that are important to me, and that's one of them. I haven't really been as invested in gaming for a bit. Ironically, I bought Baldur's Gate 3, played it for like 3 days, left town for 2 weeks, came back, touched it for like another week, and then Starfield came out. And then I was like, oh, not even a week, like maybe like half a week. And I was like, oh, yeah, get away from me, BG3. And I will say they're obviously very different games. They're both role-playing games, but Baldur's Gate 3 is a Dungeons and Dragons type thing, which I guess it's meant to resemble that, sort of, but with some, caveats for making it fun to play as an actual game. And I've never played Dungeons and Dragons before, and I get the general gist of it because a lot of my friends play it a lot, and they're doing campaigns and stuff. But this is just different. They already had a friend group playing it. My friend group already had the 4 people playing it together, because of course they did. Then again, it's their D&D group, and I'm not in it, so what do you expect, right? I'm not really a huge player of that. So I didn't really expect to play it, and apparently you were supposed to play it solo anyways, which is fun. Like, it's fine. But I don't know, like the controls and all that, I'm not as much of a fan of it. I like the more simplified action RPG thing. And, I care more about like cool storylines and cool locations and less so about the intricate mechanics of rolling dice. But then again, all the rolling dice stuff is sort of done, right? But all that stuff, and, I generally preferred it with Starfield. And Starfield is the newest Bethesda game, which is the first original IP from Bethesda, who is a game development company, of course, and, they made Elder Scrolls and Fallout, and, I think that's about it, really. Bethesda, they haven't really put out, it's been many, many years since they made an original, like, property that isn't, like, Elder Scrolls is their baby. Fallout, they took over after, was it Obsidian? I don't think it was Obsidian. After the original developers for Fallout, and they totally changed the game style. And that's not their property, but, they sort of reshaped into theirs. And they've put out enough games now, so it's cool. But Starfield's the first. We're building this from the ground up. And it's sci-fi. And it's space-themed, which is pretty cool, right? We sort of now have 3 different things. Starfield and Fallout are both a futuristic thing, but they're 2 different ones. Fallout is post-apocalyptic nuclear wasteland. Starfield is space. And I think Starfield's further in the future, right? You can fly in ships. You can't do that in Fallout, and you can't do that in Skyrim. Or Elder Scrolls. Elder Scrolls, of course, like high fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons type thing. It was a CRPG, computer RPG, more stringent about mechanics, rolls, random chance, stuff that would be closer to tabletop games like D&D. So I guess we can just sort of discuss some of the mechanics, things like that. Story-wise, I haven't finished it, but I think I get the gist of it. You're sort of working in a space mining company. You're on a planet. You have to go fight some pirates, and then a guy on the mission, a guy who was working for you, was like, "Hey, I gotta come. You gotta come help. Come with me. You're on a new mission." So now you're with like a group of space explorers from random parts of the just galaxy or whatever, right? Just a bunch of different people, both trying to explore space. Because while you're mining, you touch this weird metal thingy, and you start seeing visions. And then the whole game is basically, the main story is you going to see the artifacts, they're calling them, and you're going to go, have some visions. And obviously, that's the main crux of it. But the fun part, to me, is that you can do whatever you want. Sort of. And that's the thing. A lot of the criticism of this game is the fact that, well, there's a lot to do, but you don't have as much freedom to do it. Right? And this is in the sense of, let's say, traversal. Okay? This game allows you to get in this game allows you to get in spaceships. It doesn't allow you to control them except in space for a very small area of playing. You can't fly onto a planet, because you can go to other planets, but you have to open a menu up, click land, and it does it automatically. Now, is this a problem? In my personal opinion, no. But we've had games like, I think, was it Star Citizen? I forgot what it was. It's not Metro. I forgot. Elite Dangerous and No Man's Sky. And I'm going to use No Man's Sky as the biggest comparison. No Man's Sky is a game, of course, where people overhyped the game, the developers. People got very mad at them, and they sort of spent years and years rectifying it with a bunch of free updates. And now it's a pretty solid game. But you get to fly on ships, and you get to drop in procedurally generated planets. And it's sort of an RPG thing where you're traveling planets trying to find things, and you can trade with people and build stuff and build bases. Starfield has a lot of those mechanics, but it's less dynamic, I think. And that's intentional, right? It's meant to be this more crafted, story-based thing, where No Man's Sky is more of an open thing where it didn't even have a main quest and didn't really tell you anything until later. You don't really talk to that many people there is now. Yeah, you kind of do. But it's more of a solitary affair, whereas Starfield, you have companions with you, you have a bunch of quest lines to do. It's much more of a classic figure out how to do things, but just it's more of a story-based thing. And in terms of a lot of the freedom of Bethesda's RPGs and builds, you do have that, but it's definitely probably a bit more restrictive. But that might just be how I'm playing it, right? I'm not a fan of when I play a game and there's like 30 billion things for me to do, and I don't know what to do, and I don't know how to do what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do first, and we call this in the industry. The industry is in this room right here where I'm sitting and talking to the microphone on air. Analysis paralysis. And I've sort of thought about how much of a problem it is when it comes to these sort of open games and sort of life in general for me, but especially in the game front because it's a sort of an isolated circumstance of it. I had this with the Harry Potter game. Yeah, I played it. I got like 10 hours in and I got bored of it, right? GTA. Elden Ring, not really, because I just got frustrated because it's hard and I'm not a good gamer. Cyberpunk a couple of times, although that was because the game kept breaking on me and I had to wait for updates. And I got to like the last dialogue option that sort of, I guess, maybe helps choose your final ending, but I didn't know what it was, so I just never returned to it. There's an expansion. Okay. 1 second. Sorry about that, y'all. Let's return to talking about Starfield. I think the biggest criticism I've heard, and there's two big criticisms of it, okay? Let's get to the criticisms real quick, because I enjoyed it. The gameplay's fun. I like traveling around. I like the story. I just like doing stuff. It's fun to do stuff. The combat's actually good, and, in other Bethesda games, they just haven't been that good. Fallout 4, I remember, was a marked improvement in the firearm-related side of combat. But, generally, it feels good. Reviewers said it was better than Cyberpunk. I don't remember too well, but kind of. I don't think everything isn't a little bit more snappy, maybe a little less realistic, but it doesn't feel as weighty. It's a little bit more arcadey and a little bit more fun in that regard. So I did think I preferred that, right? Someone else do it. What else? Yeah, story's good. Oh, that's good. Okay, let's see. Criticisms. Okay. Number 1, graphics. People were hyping this game up. It does look pretty good, but it's not like generational leaping, right? It's a new engine, and the game engine, which is what the game runs on, what everything runs on, the whole stack, I guess, that Bethesda's been using has been pretty old. It's based off of something from 2004, and they've just been stacking upon it. And apparently now they're running on Creation Engine 2, which is apparently a big leap forward. But a lot of it is very similar under the hood. This leads to the game being pretty badly optimized, in my opinion, right? Or maybe it's so good that nothing can run it. Cyberpunk was kind of that, where the game was actually pretty optimized if you were running it at normal settings and lower settings than you might maybe expect. And especially, without ray tracing. But here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. This doesn't even use that much processing power. You have this weird jump in GPU power where it turns out that I've read about it. Here's the thing, right? And some techno babble for you guys real quick. Reason why it's not running super well, one of the main reasons, one, it seems to be a very CPU intensive game because it calculates a lot of the states of a lot of different people and like NPCs and items and locations and everything like that, which is fair, right? That's a fair thing. Has to calculate the stuff. Number two, it's not using your full GPU wattage. And GPU wattage, what is that? How much power is your graphics card using? And the amount of power that your graphics card is using, it says on the performance, because I pulled it up, how much is my GPU being used? 100%, or near that. It's using up a lot of my GPU and enough of my CPU, where it turns out that I don't really have a bottleneck right now. Because if I recall correctly, I looked it up because I had to make sure. You want your GPU to be near max capacity and your CPU to have a decent amount of headroom to not be fully packed. You don't want one being stressed out too much while the other isn't, right? Or maybe I am CPU bottlenecked or GPU bottlenecked. I don't know, right? I don't know, but either way, I'm not buying anything new because I don't need to. I have a good computer. The other thing, one, the wattage. At two, there wasn't really a good upscaling technique. It was apparently really prevalent for NVIDIA cards because they partnered with the other big graphics card manufacturer and the one that not as many people really like, I think, AMD. So it has FSR, which is their sort of game scaling thing, which every game nowadays has that on PC or console, which basically entails you have the game render at a lower resolution internally and then upscale itself with some algorithm, AI, machine learning, whatever you want to call it. Depends on what you're using. And that'll improve performance and, maybe make things look a little more crisp. DLSS is the NVIDIA version of it. You need their card for it. FSR works on everything, but it's not as good, especially for NVIDIA cards. Yeah, it's an interesting little thing. So, of course, we have a bunch of mods coming out. I installed the one that fixed up the inventory because it was kind of clunky. Oh, yeah, another criticism. It's clunky. It's very clunky. I don't really understand. It took a lot of things for me to figure out how the menu worked and what buttons to press and when to press it and where to go because there isn't really a proper map in the game. I sound like I'm having a lot of criticisms, but I'm still invested in it. That's the important thing. The map, I don't know where to go. There's no waypoint. There's like a waypoint system, but it's like it kind of just doesn't really give you a good way to do it. You don't really have a good way to get to a place because of how much you can fast travel everywhere, right? Once you walk to a location and discover it, then you can just fast travel to it from basically anywhere in the map, anywhere in the game, and millions of light years away or whatever. You can just do that. So there is an interesting little debacle. How are you going to make it harder? How are you going to make more exploration? Well, one, you can, of course, explore planets outside of, let's say, these gated city areas, but they're all basically just procedurally generated slabs of a few different types of terrain and piecemealed areas. And they're not that big either. These planets aren't as big as something as No Man's Sky, but it's different in the sense of there's a lot of these planets. One, there aren't per computer unique. No Man's Sky, if I recall correctly, is basically entirely unique in a lot of ways, depending on what game you're running and what computer you're running. Like whatever instance you're playing it at, it'll generate everything. Starfield's the same no matter what. It's not like the game is generating content on the fly. They generated it while they're building and then put it in as is, right? So there you go. You don't know where to go. You have to follow these arrows. You can open up like a scanner thing, and you can sort of follow things. You can follow arrows on the ground, but sometimes it doesn't work. I haven't had to do this many times in a game, but I've had to look up several times where is something located. I'm like, where is the doctor located? If it was a normal game, I could pull up the map, and instead of me just showing a bunch of waypoints I can fast travel to, it would say, hey, look, here's where the doctor is. Here's where a store is. Instead of having to look at street signs and basically navigate, not knowing where to go. Maybe it's because I'm not paying enough attention or I'm not immersed enough, but the rest of the game with the whole fast travel thing makes me think that they don't care if I'm being immersed and I'm really a real Star citizen. I could do whatever I want. No, I'm just treating it like a bunch of quests because fun little story elements. That's how I treated Cyberpunk 2077. That's how I'm going to be treating Starfield. Although a little bit more openness with Starfield because I can do more. You can build stuff. You can't do that in Cyberpunk. The RPG stuff is probably... I can't tell which one had more like RPG, like modification elements. Because in Cyberpunk, you had a bunch of brain and body mods you could do. In Starfield, you have like set equipment, but you can find new ones that are more modified and more damaged. I don't know. I sincerely can't tell. They're different games, but the two things that I really found interesting about Cyberpunk and maybe less so Starfield, is that, it wasn't so much of an open world. Like, you can just go do whatever you want. You can walk into a store. You can go, like, they wanted to, like, I'll just talk about Cyberpunk real quick, right? Obviously, there's going to be a big update coming soon with the one and only expansion called Phantom Liberty, which I will probably end up getting, right? Maybe I'll beat Starfield and do that. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't even know how long Phantom Liberty will be. But that is besides the point, right? People were hyping it up, and maybe the developers too a little bit, as GTA but Cyberpunk, right? GTA, Grand Theft Auto. You know what's Grand Theft Auto? It's the one where you can walk or you can drive around a whole city doing whatever you want, playing tennis, hurting innocent pedestrians, and getting chased after by the police. It's the video game equivalent of just doing what you want and basically indulging all your evil hedonistic desires. And that's why a lot of people, wanted to censor GTA and not want people to play it, And two, why a lot of people like playing it, because you just do what you want. You can be the criminal that you can't be in real life, or that you shouldn't be. Can't and shouldn't be. You shouldn't do that. Don't do crime. McGruff the crime dog is right on air. No. But Cyberpunk isn't like that. It's not like that. You know what it's like, listener? It's like a bunch of story missions shoveled together with some dumb open world stuff. Just delete the open world part of it, have a more focused story game, and you have a really good game. But you can just play it like that, and that's generally how I play these games. So I don't mind that Starfield doesn't have so much open stuff. Actually, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I mean, there's a lot of things you could do. You can modify ships. You could build an entire spaceship from scratch, right? You can apparently, you can apply to join the UC Vanguard, which is like a military thing. But it's not like you just get randomly sent on missions. No, it's a whole story thing. But the thing I kind of love about it is the fact that in the middle of dealing with a bunch of, parasitic alien super monsters, that's the Terramorphs, by the way, if you don't know what that is, play the game. It's a really, really good quest line. Do that. I highly recommend you do it. It was really fun and really good. But in the middle of that, you can just open up your map, go teleport to a random part, and go explore Earth. In the middle of your mission, you can just say, hey, this mission sucks. I'm going to go to Earth. Our Earth, that's basically been frozen over into a terrible frozen scape and also desert, and basically no inhabitable life because the magnetic poles or something froze over and they had to evacuate Earth. I've just really been getting into sci-fi now, and it's super cool. I don't even know if I've really been a huge sci-fi guy, but I've always had a bit of a soft spot for it as sort of a setting and storytelling device. Way more than high fantasy. I could give 2 cents. I couldn't even give 2 cents. I could give nothing about high fantasy. Oh, the wizard. Oh, the dragon's gotta be slain. I don't care. Give me spaceship. Give me laser guns, dude. Give me aliens, right? Give me exploring planets. That's awesome. I want to explore planets, I haven't been able to. I'm not going to go. I'm probably never going to go to space. Who do you think I am? An astrophysicist? Who do you think I am? An astronaut? Who do you think I am? Math? I guess informatics is sort of a math thing, but you get the picture, right? I get to do this, and it gets me more invested and excited in other things I can study about. So that's the one thing one of the things I've been really excited about with Starfield. I read this story. I need to look up the name of it. Is it Andy Egan? No. I'm trying to think. Closer. Greg Egan's Closer. I saw this on a Twitter, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter's random reply to a random post that was just, I don't even want to say it. It was just so dumb. Something about, not even dumb, just weird AI stuff. But they're like, oh, what's the story called Closer? It was so good. I read it 2 a.m. last night. It was so good. Read that. It's on the internet for free. It's cool. It's this weird thing. It's weird, I think it was, I read about him, hard science fiction, and a lot of it, maybe less so about this Closer story because it's more fantastical in terms of implants and brain computer things. But, you essentially have these questions about what does it mean to be a person in consciousness. And I'll quickly explain the story of it real quick. I want you to read it if you like to. It's It's not that long. It's a little long. I don't even know how many words it is. It's not that long. I read it in like 20 minutes max. And also, I'm also kind of a fast reader, so maybe it might be longer for you. So if you're a slow reader, I don't know, just look at it. It's a short story. It's not that long. It's not no Order of the Phoenix. It's not no Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire specifically. Or I guess Game of Thrones isn't really a book in the series, is it? That's interesting. But essentially, super future, your human brain, when you turn 18, the vast majority of people, your brain is ripped out of your body, and then you instead get implanted with this computer that was trained, that basically has your brain. It just has your brain, it emulates your brain. And after that, your body is the same, but your brain is just being emulated by a computer, basically. And that means you can switch bodies. So this guy basically talks about meeting this lady, and they're lovers, and they decide he wants to know what it's like to think as her. He wants to know what it's like to be her. Not just her experiences, but her thought processes, all of that. And they do some things, and they do some attempts to get closer to each other in the more, I guess, not physical sense, more the metaphorical sense. And they learn some new developments because of that, and there's multiple structures. And that's really cool, right? And I'm not going to spoil how it goes, but what I really enjoyed about it was the world building around it. You sort of get to know a little piece and bits and pieces about this futuristic world. They don't call it, there's holovision, there's holophones, and they're like implanted in your brain, so you can't anyways. They don't call it TV, they call it HV. Obviously, it's like, oh, we got the holographic television. It's all super spacey. It's all holographic and cyber and implants and, that sort of thing. Which is interesting to bring it back to Starfield, because one of the other interesting things I thought about, I forgot the specific era and the theme-ish, like, style of sci-fi that they wanted to make Starfield, but I read about it. I'm going to look it up right now while I'm talking, just to make sure what it is. And basically, you essentially, they wanted it to be something different that hasn't been done before. So, Starfield sci-fi style. Soft sci-fi. Science fantasy with a hard... they call it NASA punk Starfield. That's what they're trying to call it, right? The NASA punk. Yeah, there it is. That's exactly what I got out of it. Okay, so they called it, we're going to make it look like NASA punk. And what does that mean? To me, I've noticed that it feels much more grounded in reality than a lot of other space fantasy stuff or sci-fi, whatever. In the sense of, like, one, you can't, we haven't found any sentient beings yet. I think the game's story might have something to do with that, but we don't know. I don't want to tell you. Two, a lot of the technology, though pretty cool, isn't super life-altering in the sense that generally, we're still humans, right? We don't have any implants in us. Obviously, that's not the whole point of it. It's not as much of a cyberization thing. And, let me see. And a lot of it sort of feels like, but not 100%, which I like. It felt like, I suppose... You ever been to Tomorrowland? Not like that, but when Tomorrowland first was built in like the 1960s, I think, maybe it was a little earlier or later, I don't recall. But Tomorrowland is in the section in Disneyland. There was like this future, the way they thought the future was going to look in like the 1950s and 60s. It's kind of a little bit there in Starfield. I kind of like that sort of. It's like that weird idealism, Like, I felt like the 1950s were like this weird sort of super idealist time, at least maybe in terms of how it's presented. A lot of people look at it through rose-colored glasses, and I'm not saying that that's what the 50s were good. We're all good. There was a lot of problems. But in terms of what people, people might have been more hopeful. People were like, we can go in the 1950s, in the great year of 1987, human beings are going to go ahead, and we're going to go down to the space dome, You heard that right? Yeah, you heard that right, Charlie. That weird Atlantic accent that every single announcer had, which I gotta think about that. I don't know where that came from. Is it just microphone technology? Because it was all kind of a weird, like, nasally tinge. We're bouncing off the walls, of course, but we're trying to tie us into it has that sort of retro future. It does feel unique. It's interesting. It's not fully future, but it's not fully future, but there's a bit of futurism sort of pumped into it, you know? So I do think that Starfield does get a pretty good aesthetic going with it, you know? That's one of the things I actually like about it. It feels pretty believable, everything around you, you know? It feels way closer to what space might look like in the next, what interplanetary whatever travel can look like in the next, say, couple hundred years. Now, is that going to happen? I don't know, probably not. We'll see. I hope so. We'll see. In the year 2330 or something like that, in the 2300s is when Starfield takes place. It's not even in the far, far future, right? I think. It's a few hundred years away. And America's only like 200, maybe 300 years old at this point, almost there. So, you know, we have a long difference. But it's a really cool aesthetic with Starfield, you know? It's a really cool aesthetic. I enjoy it. The gameplay is fun. I got the option to commit to one of the followers, and I said, I love you very much, and they just didn't say anything, so I was like, do I really want to marry this person? Can I go check out the other people? Because the other last thing about Starfield that I think is cool. But we'll see how that goes, right? So, Starfield, right? Overall, I enjoy it. The final thing we can quickly cover, and then I think I'm going to play... do I even want to play Skin in the Game? Yes. Yeah, whatever. I'll play Skin in the Game for the newest Slowdive album, just so y'all can get a taste of my favorite song. Maybe it's... Yeah, we'll just play it. I guess the last thing... You know what? No, I already talked about the concert. Website. Let's talk about that real quick, and then we'll play off the last song, and then, you know, we'll play you off with some filler or whatever, and we'll just have a nice little fun time, and you'll enjoy yourselves. All right? I sat down like a week ago, and I decided, because I talked about this on the air, dear listener, if you've heard that episode, I hope you've been listening every single week for as long as it's been on, through rain and snow and whatever other freak weather occurrences can happen in Southern California. But I was like, I'm going to make a website for this Space Tune stuff, and also my other YouTube stuff, and also other creative digital things that aren't super, here's my CS portfolio company, can you please hire me? Which, of course, in that one, I'd have to make it all black and white and, like, super professional looking. No, not this one. We're going to use the same font we use everything. We're going to make it bright, colorful, pink. Make it pink. It's basedari.com. The website is up now. You guys can hop onto it. Let me know. Let me know how the website is, because I'm really curious. I spent a lot of time dealing with hosting services because I coded it myself, right? Now, obviously, I realized that it would have been a lot easier to use a builder, because Squarespace, like that, you could build it all through Squarespace. The other option is, you can go through a hosting service, right? And they can have WordPress integration. And, you know, WordPress is there. You can use WordPress. One, it's like, it's free and it's open source, but two, it has theming elements. You can theme stuff. It's WordPress.org, not the .com one. You have a lot of interesting things. And, well, it was a challenge. The code is sloppy. But to be honest with you, I am really, really, really just proud of this thing. I thought it was great. I just thought it was amazing, right? I spent so much time on the CSS. Having it to scale differently on mobile devices is different. It's just a challenge, you know? It's just a big challenge to get all that working. It's a massive challenge, in my opinion. And there's not even any scripting on the site. That's the funny thing to me, you know? There isn't even any scripting. There's no JavaScript. There's no PHP. It looks like, and I feel kind of bad about that because I added a nav bar. I made it sticky, so if you scroll down, it stays there. I made it look cool like that, you know. I might even make the header image stay there. But the thing that I'm a little concerned about, visually wise, and I need to think about it and figure out how to make the design better, because, you know, I put this out because I would have just been working on it for a turn if I didn't put out one version of it and just bite the bullet and pay for the hosting. It wasn't that expensive at all. It was like $30-$40 total. And it's going to renew like $100 every year. Isn't great, but I could probably manage that, right? It's about like a paycheck's worth, maybe. Well, less than a paycheck. But anyways, right? Like, I don't want it to look like a web. To me, I feel bad because of it kind of looks like Web 1.0 out of like HTML like 2 on a computer in the 90s with nicer fonts. But I think it's still clean and easy to present. Part of it, I think, is because the entire website is one solid color, and that solid color is the pink shade. I couldn't really find a good color to match it with. I use websites to try and, you know, there's a lot of websites you can literally just punch in a hex color code or whatever, and it'll give you a palette, but I couldn't think of anything that would work well with the pink, so maybe we just don't do the pink. But the pink is the whole point of my aesthetic, and it's my favorite color. I don't really know, right? But, you know, it's all worth it in the end, you know? I thought it was a fun challenge, and I've been stressing out a lot about the whole I'm going into my third year of university, and I do internships and all that stuff and all the money-making things, and it's just like, ugh. Like, I'm doing great things. We're doing great things at the station, you know? I'm getting some great things done with the marketing stuff, right? I'm getting some great things done. And I will be, especially way more coming up when the school year starts. But like, that's not the coding thing. But hey, you know, but then the other part of me is like, hey, you know, chill out, man. It's summer. We got time. You can just hang out, you know, still get some stuff done. But this stuff does help. So, you know, if you're over stressing out about feeling stuck and not really wanting to get anything done, like being able to, just do a project. Do something that you can maybe throw. I could probably just throw it on my resume. Be like, here's my website that I made in HTML and CSS. See, employer, I know how to code in website. But I don't know a specific stack or whatever, so I'm going to end up not being able to be experienced. Here's a job that'll get you lots of experience. Requires 2 to 6 years of experience. You know how it goes. Welcome to the money industry. You know, I'm gonna close y'all out. All right, with before the Slowdive song. You know, Skin in the Game by Slowdive from Everything Is Alive. It's pretty good. I hope you enjoy it. 7 out of 10 album, but the song is really good. Okay, I'm pulling this over now. My partner, girlfriend, whatever, she sent me this quote from Guillermo del Toro because I was very stressed out about this stuff, and I was visibly stressed out near her. And, you know, she didn't understand why I was so stressed out for a bit, but, well, now she is, right? Well, you know, it was an interesting discussion about why it stressed me out so much and things you can do, and, you know, it is an interesting mix. Those sort of I love those sort of, like, me freaking out with someone else because it's an interesting discussion, like a mix between I'm comforting you, but there's also stuff you could do. It's a weird 50-50. But director Guillermo del Toro said about people in their 20s. And as I'm a 20-year-old living his life, to all the 20 people in their 20s listening in, this might be comforting. You know, I read this quote out to my friends, and they were all in their 20s. And I mentioned that to them. Like, wow, we're all in our 20s. Wow. And they actually also agreed with me on this. So I hope you guys enjoy this quote. All right, let's get to it. I think the sublime confusion is from 19 to 29. You think you are late for everything. You're a has-been. And nothing is happening. There is no opportunity for you. The world is closed. Everything is a disaster. You want to die. And then you're 30. You young people are in the exact age of desperation. I never felt more done and old than in my 20s. I'd say life has passed me and I did nothing, but I'm here to tell you that's not true. You have a lot of time. So that's the end of the episode for Bass Tunes on KUCI 88.9 FM in Irvine. We're going to close y'all out with Skin in the Game by Slowdive, maybe a bit. Make sure to stay on the air for Ann Her, Operation Community Stimulus. Should be at 5:30. I hope you enjoy. It looks like she's got an interview in the studio, live in-studio interview for Ann, so I hope you enjoy that. Lovely lady, lovely show host, lovely show in general. If you want to check me out socially, listen, I have a big favor to ask y'all. Go on the website, all right? Let me know how it is. BASED ARI.com. Basedari.com. You don't have to follow. You don't have to tell me that. Oh, you don't have to show your support. You don't have to acknowledge. You don't have to do anything. Just scroll through it a bit. And if you don't want to tell me, do it. And if you don't want to check it out, don't. I don't even know who's listening right now. So if you do, cool. Hope you enjoyed it. If you do, right? I will probably update it soon. You want to contact me, the socials are on the website, but Instagram, follow it if you want. Any bands, interview, anybody, I will get some soon, hopefully. BASEDTUNESKUCI. That's Basetunes KUCI, all lowercase, no spaces, dashes, whatever, on Instagram. That's it. I've been Aryan Salimi. I guess put my full name out there, whatever. I've been doing it for how long? Anything about that? This has been Bass Tunes on KUCI 88.9 FM in Irvine. All right, stay based, everybody. And guess what? Even though I haven't listened to the album in a while. All right, partner. Keep on rolling, baby. You know what time it is. It's Fred Durst Friday. Yeah, it is Fred Durst Friday. All right, Skin in the Game by Slowdive. Stay on the air. And her. Coming soon. Thank you all very much. I love you all very much.